Happy Easter. I'm Charlie Sykes, and Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, a terror attack kills dozens in Brussels. President Obama visits Cuba and takes in a baseball game. A new study says Wisconsin has the highest electricity rates in the region, but we pay less because we're so frugal. Speaker Paul Ryan makes a plea for civility in politics. Marquette University decides not to fire Professor John McAdams, but suspends him for writing a blog post critical of political correctness, demands an apology. And the presidential campaign comes full bore to Wisconsin. And that's where we're going to start. The eyes of the political world turn to Wisconsin as the candidates descend on the state ahead of the April 5th primary. Senator Ted Cruz kicked off his campaign with an appearance in Pewaukee on my Insight 2016 show.
We need a president who isn't constrained by political correctness, who's willing to say the words radical Islamic terrorism, and to act decisively to defeat radical Islamic terrorism.
Ohio Governor John Kasich also hit the stump, and visits are on tap from Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and Hillary Clinton. A new Emerson College poll showed Hillary Clinton leading Sanders here by 6 points. The same poll showed the Republican race dead even between Trump and Cruz, with Kasich trailing. In Wisconsin, delegates are allotted to the statewide winner and to the winner of each of the 8 congressional districts. The Conservative Club for Growth went up on television with this ad urging conservatives to rally around Ted Cruz to stop Donald Trump.
Only Ted Cruz can beat Donald Trump. John Kasich can't do it. The math won't work. A vote for Kasich actually helps Trump by dividing the opposition. But while the candidates debated the war on terror, immigration, and the economy, the campaign again took a nasty and a very personal turn. The day after putting out a tweet threatening to spill the beans on Ted Cruz's wife, Heidi, Donald Trump himself retweeted this picture, which drew this response from Ted Cruz.
It's not easy to tick me off. I don't get angry often. But you mess with my wife, you mess with my kids, that'll do it every time. Donald, you're a sniveling coward, and leave Heidi the hell alone.
Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Mikel Holt, political consultant Jo Baas, political strategist Lynne DeBruin, and the managing editor of RightWisconsin.com, Collin Roth. Okay, Collin, we've talked in the past about, well, okay, this is going to be a problem for Donald Trump. This is going to be the turning point. How does that whole tweeting thing play here in Wisconsin?
Well, here in Wisconsin, it has to be a big factor among Republican voters. I think there's a fundamental decency about Republican voters here in Wisconsin, and they're not going to put up with that. But what we've seen is that core of Trump supporters, they're not moved by anything. They've been through it all. They've seen all the flip-flops. They've seen the insults. And this is their guy no matter what.
Yeah, but here in Wisconsin, in southeastern Wisconsin, Donald Trump is not polling well. In fact, in the suburban counties, the so-called WOW counties, Waukesha, Ozaukee, Washington counties, he has about a 64% disapproval rating. And obviously that talk radio might have something to do with that. But I wanted to get your reaction, too. I mean, when have we ever had a candidate for president of the United States tweeting out unflattering pictures about his opponent's wife?
You know, this is so absurd. I understand that, I understand why Trump was unhappy when a PAC or a super PAC put out the Cruz ad that showed the pictures of Melania.
It was not a Cruz ad.
Well, right. It was a group who was spending for Cruz, not connected to his...
This group is not, that's just false. They are spending money against Trump.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
I was trying to say they're not connected to the Cruz campaign.
Right.
And so when they did that, I understand why Trump would, and he'd have handled it a lot better if he'd just come out and said, that's a tacky ad. My wife was, a model. Get over it. Move on.
Right.
But instead, he chose, which I think shows his horrific personality, which is why he's so unsuited to be president. He chose to ratchet up even further, and he hit back. I don't want a president who, when we get hit by some small country decides, trying to tick us off, that we get baited like that and go ahead and attack back.
Okay. Mayor Jo Baas.
In this reality show parading as a presidential campaign, it's almost impossible, I agree with Collin, to move Trump voters. So what we should be doing is getting the Cruz voters out.
Right.
We've got to work on getting real Republicans in the WOW counties, getting them out to the polls.
Okay, what is John Kasich doing here in Wisconsin? There's no chance that he's going to win a single delegate here in Wisconsin. He is playing a spoiler role. Why is he still in this race?
I have to believe that his goal is to bring it to an open convention, because that's the only way he can be the only way he can ever be president.
Right. But the only way to do an open convention is to stop Donald Trump here. The only way that Donald Trump is not stopped.
I don't think that's true. If he can split the vote, if Trump can win in Wisconsin, some believe that makes it an open convention.
Well, you know, I think last Thursday the governor signed legislation for regulating mixed martial arts fighting. So maybe he did that assuming that now that Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are going to slug it out. And I think the guy who looks most like Herman Munster's father is going to win that particular race. That particular fight. Aside from that, this election will not be determined in Wisconsin by how many people go to Cruz. It'll be determined by how many Democrats vote for the one they want to face Hillary Clinton.
I don't think there's going to be a big crossover here, because I do think that the Democrats are going to turn out to vote in the Sanders-Hillary race. But I also think that it's a mistake to see this simply as a feminist issue or a women's issue, because, you know, I'm looking at this and going, you know, how do you as a father explain this to your sons or your daughters that this is acceptable behavior? How do parents justify this kind of behavior? And leaving aside the politics and the ideology, just the effect on the culture. Guys, a real man does not make fun of the looks of someone else's wife. You just don't do this. Donald Trump apparently, and again, this is what's so amazing, he's on the cusp of winning this nomination, and yet he's unable to control himself. He is unable to make that switch to be presidential. It'll be very interesting to see what Scott Walker does this week. What has your glass half full? What has your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you're first.
Well, my glass is half full because UWM is honoring the request of 3 of its basketball players to be released from their commitments. My glass is half empty because UWM may end up with no basketball team and fewer boosters next season as a result of the idiotic decision by Amanda Brown to fire highly regarded coach Rob Jeter.
Mayor Jo Baas.
My glass is half full because New Jersey Governor Chris Christie issued a pair of pardons to residents unfairly prosecuted under the state's insanely strict gun laws. My glass is half empty because now a third pardon is needed for an actor facing up to 10 years in prison for using a pellet gun as a movie prop.
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, our flags are at half staff over Tuesday's terrorist attacks in Belgium. But thankfully, the follow-up investigation has had some breaks that have saved lives. Authorities found a 35-pound bomb that failed to explode, a house with a bomb factory inside, and arrests are being made.
Collin Roth.
My glass is half full because Republicans and conservatives turned to Wisconsin for another important election. It's half empty because some are allowing their hatred of Cruz to interfere with the goal of stopping Donald Trump.
Well, my glass is half full because this latest incident of crude, demeaning attacks on women by Donald Trump continues to expose him as a misogynistic bully. It's half empty because he's already insulted Mexicans, prisoners of war, the disabled, and our intelligence for months, and he's still the front runner. Our Sunday Insight Countdown shows the Wisconsin primary is just 9 days away. The Republican National Convention begins in 113 days. The Democratic National Convention begins in 120 days, and the presidential election is 226 days away, and we'll be right back. A case of academic freedom, or the lack of it, at Marquette University. After more than a year, Marquette President Michael Lovell announced on the day before Good Friday that the university would suspend Professor John McAdams without pay for the 2016 fall semester, but also demanded that he apologize. The case has drawn national attention because it's rare for a university to fire a tenured professor for something they said or wrote. McAdams was suspended after reporting on his blog, which he calls the Marquette Warrior, that a student had provided him with audio recordings of another teacher telling a student that traditional views on gay marriage were banned in her classroom for fear of offending other students. After that post was written, Marquette suspended Adams, later tried to fire him. When I asked McAdams if he planned to comply with Marquette's new demands that he apologize, he told me, When hell freezes over, your reaction to Marquette's decision, Mary Jo Baas.
Well, it seems insane to me that Marquette is acting as though the instructor is the one that's being picked on, when a student who wanted to talk about the Catholic position on gay marriage, who wasn't insulting but wanted to talk about it, is the one who's actually being silenced.
What's amazing to me is that Marquette would make this decision knowing the damage to its reputation and knowing how much it's going to cost in this lawsuit, and yet apparently they are so determined to get this one professor that they are willing to become ground zero in this fight over academic freedom. Mikel Holt.
And I don't think he's really going to lose, because he's standing up for principle.
Yeah.
He is going to lose his job. And as you said...
I don't think so.
Well,
he's contractually in the actual contract, the tenure documents, it guarantees them academic freedom.
What does that mean, though?
Well,
this is a Jesuit university. This is not a public college.
Right, but they actually have written in the protections of the First Amendment into their contract, and I think when this goes to federal court, it's not only going to cost donors an awful lot of money, I think they're ultimately going to lose this, but apparently they were willing to go that far, which is amazing.
So they're standing on principle, and he's standing on principle.
Well, I'm not sure what principle they're standing on. What do you think, Lynne DeBruin?
I think they were trying to walk a fine line, hoping that this compromise would solve things. And I think if you're going to say, okay, we're going to suspend you for a semester, you get to keep your benefits, but not your pay, and we're not firing you. The triple line here was saying that, demanding that he had to apologize. If you're going to put that in there as a way to try and end this, I mean, that was the wrong thing to put in there. They should have just left that out.
And the faculty committee did not actually recommend that, so that was something the administration put in. And anybody who has spent 5 minutes talking with John McAdams knew there was absolutely no chance,
So what was it? It was 123 pages
and unanimous.
Exactly.
Well, I think the entire episode is disgraceful, from his suspension to being banned from campus, like he's some sort of monster or dangerous to the campus. This is a man who reported factually on an incident that occurred, and it really brought to the bear the entire climate on Marquette's campus, that you can't even actually have a classroom discussion about traditional views on marriage versus same-sex marriage views. Why isn't that allowed in a classroom? That's
amazing. They have had 16 months now to think through what the implications of this decision would be. The fact that almost no university at this level has ever tried to fire a tenured professor for something that they wrote, for ideas they expressed, and they are going to be in the middle of a national firestorm. And I wonder whether the Board of Trustees fully understands that. I wonder about the people who are writing checks understand that, or the implications of this, because the issues about the growing intellectual intolerance on campuses is just going to get bigger, and they are going to be exhibit number one. Now, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Mikel Holt, you're first.
Well, to all the new Ted Cruz supporters who previously thought he was too far over the edge to be president, guess what? He still is.
Mary Jo Baas.
My unsolicited advice is for the students at Emory, where some felt unsafe after finding Trump 2016 written in chalk. As one of those who fought university officials for the right to be treated as an adult and to direct my own education, tell those crybabies to grow up before they set back the cause another 25 years.
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, on a bizarre note, to the Florida woman who was arrested for having sex with her dogs, sending your boyfriend videos of your doggy's sex life while he was in the police station under arrest and can turn you in for a plea deal makes you both disgusting and dumb.
Well, how do you follow that?
I guess I'm supposed to. My advice is for all Marquette alums and donors to consider withholding your dollars from the university until they commit to protecting academic freedom.
Well, I agree with that. Well, my unsolicited advice is for Republican voters, even if you admire John Kasich, please understand that a vote for Kasich next week is a vote for Donald Trump. The only way that Trump wins in Wisconsin is if conservatives continue to split their votes. Wisconsinites need to be smarter than that. Next on Sunday Insight, Abley versus Larson, the big money being spent in the Milwaukee County executives race. Campaigns for state Supreme Court, Milwaukee mayor and county executive also are heating up and are turning into big money affairs. Incumbent Chris Abley is reportedly buying up to $500,000 of TV airtime in the weeks before the April 5th election for Milwaukee County Executive, much of it targeting his opponent, State Senator Chris Larson, for supporting tax increases.
Chris Larson says he's for us, but a triple tax and increasing property taxes, that's working against us.
Okay, Lynne DeBruin, obviously this spending would be an indication that Chris Abele realizes he's in trouble.
You know, I think so, because it's not just the $500,000 he's spending on TV. He's also all over the radio, and almost every other day I'm getting lit pieces from both Abele's side and Larson's side. So the bottom line is, even though there haven't been publicly released polls, I think something internally in the Larson's camp is saying they've got some issues. I
will say this, though, that this ad is the first time that I've seen that Chris Abele's campaign seems to recognize they need to move to the center. They need to appeal to the center-right voters in Milwaukee County. This one might actually help him out.
Right, exactly. Chris Abele is not going to out-left Chris Larson.
Right.
He's got to give...
And he was trying to do that for a while.
He was.
Right.
And he's got to give moderates and conservatives a reason to vote for him. He needs that Walker coalition.
Okay, tell me what's going on in the black community. There seems to be a very interesting divide. Gwen Moore is supporting Chris Larson. Obviously, Lena Taylor and others are not, and there was a big controversy about Chris Larson having to apologize to Lena Taylor for asking her whether she was off her meds. What is going on? How is that breaking down, Mikel Holt?
More and more black leaders are getting more and more disappointed and angry at Chris Larson.
Why?
Well, number one, and y'all can go to communityjournal.net, read my columns from the last 3 weeks. Larson has been manipulating the black political system for the last 5 years. The first thing he did as minority leader was threw Lena Taylor off of joint finance. First time in 30 years there hasn't been a black person or a Milwaukee person on joint finance. He's put people in office. He orchestrated the ouster of Jason Fields, Bev Cox. He now has Mandela Barnes running against Lena Taylor. This is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Okay, is this about personality? Is it about fact? Is it about an issue? What is it about?
Oh, all of the above.
Yeah, okay.
It's one, do you want this guy controlling, being the conductor of the Black Freedom Train? Because that's what he wants to do. He wants to be King Larson. And you know, on this show, I've said before, repeatedly, I'm not the biggest fan of Chris Abele, but this guy is far worse than Abele.
It's interesting you use the word king, because that's the nickname that Abele has had for
he stole it from my column.
King Abele, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, up until now, I don't think that frankly conservatives have had a dog in this hunt, and clearly this ad, by focusing on taxes, is an attempt to get some of those conservative voters.
Yeah, I think that's the right message for Abele to hit if he wants to get those maybe Sheriff Clark voters, those Scott Walker voters here in Milwaukee County. And we are going to see an increased turnout with the presidential race. I think Chris Abele needs to find an issue that is going to appeal across the board. No one likes new taxes.
And that, of course, is the big wild card, because this Working Families Party that is working with Chris Larson is also working with Bernie Sanders. So you're going to see whether or not that
In fact, he created that party.
Yeah. So what is it you don't get? Let's go around the table. Mikel Holt, you're first.
Well, staying on the same subject, what I don't get is why Chris Larson refuses to apologize for threatening Lena Taylor. Does he realize his threat is viewed as an insult to the entire black community?
Mary Jo Baas.
On that same note, Charlie, what I don't get is why Chris Larson hasn't been called on a statement during a recent debate that as Senate Minority Leader, he removed Lena Taylor from the powerful Joint Finance Committee because she voted for his opponent. He took the only person of color off the state's budget committee because of petty politics, and now he wants to run the entire county?
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, TV's excessive coverage of Donald Trump is being blamed for his rise. So what I don't get is why CBS Chairman Leslie Moonves verified the criticism, saying that while Trump might be bad for the United States of America, he is very, very good for CBS, and Donald should keep bringing it on.
Collin Roth.
Well, what I don't get is why John Kasich is going big in Wisconsin when he should be trying to stop Trump in the Northeast.
Well, what I don't get is how Marquette University thinks that their vindictive attempt to punish Professor John McAdams for exercising his academic freedom is worth the damage to their reputation and the huge cost of the lawsuit that's about to hit them. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It is time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Mikel Holt, you're first again.
Well, if I heard him correctly on Insight, Ted Cruz said if elected, he would destroy ISIS, carpet bomb wherever they reside. I assume that means blowing up entire countries, killing everybody. And they still believe he can win the war on terrorism? My winner, President Obama. His visit to Cuba was exploited by those ignorant of our responsibilities as a champion of democracy, or the reality that there are only two ways to change corrupt systems: through war or through righteous dialogue.
Mary Jo Baas.
My winners are Wisconsin radio and TV stations. With the presidential race still up in the air, there is going to be so much campaign spending in this state, they will have a 2-week license to print money. My losers are the television viewers who will be subjected to that barrage of campaign ads and toxic election hype.
Lynne DeBruin.
Our military currently has 39 active duty 4-star generals and admirals. March is Women's History Month, so my winners are the 4 women who are or have been in this elite group. Army General Ann Dunwoody, Air Force General Janet Wolfenbarger, Navy Admiral Michelle Howard, and Air Force General Lori Robinson, whom President Obama appointed last week to head the U.S. Northern Command, making her the first female commander of a combatant command. My loser is Radovan Karadzic, also known as the Butcher of Bosnia, who was found guilty of genocide Thursday in a UN court for ordering the 1995 massacre of more than 7,000 Bosnian men and boys. This massacre is Europe's largest mass murder since the Holocaust.
Collin Roth.
My winners are Wisconsin voters who get the attention of the nation for both the Republican and the Democratic primaries. I'll trust we'll make it interesting. My loser, all those Vichy Republicans who continue to stand behind Donald Trump as he resorts to vile and disgusting attacks like the one he made on the wife of Ted Cruz. We will not forget.
Well, my winner is Speaker Paul Ryan, who spoke out this week calling for more civility and respect in politics. Loser, our actual political culture, which grows coarser with every tweet from frontrunner Donald Trump, who is now attacking Ted Cruz's wife and mocking her looks. If this man wins, how do we explain this to our kids? How do we justify it to our sons and daughters? Thanks for joining us, and join me for my radio show Monday morning. It's on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great and happy Easter.